I just want
In the end, I'll use.
The big chair. I want the little chair.
Were you really close to four?
No, I mean, it depends what you mean by close. I have like 100 and something.
You
Plus
were
three.
really-
I think, I don't know who I would have better.
In spirit.
Good for you.
And I,
Because there's a lot more people to vote in November.
yeah. But they still haven't counted it. Right. So anything from Friday forward, they literally not the same first thing.
Really?
Okay, are we recording and ready?
It's not quite recording.
Not quite. I need to set up my dinner here. We going?
Going.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to welcome you out to the North Lawrence City Planning Commission meeting tonight. It's September 6th, 2023. Vice Chairman Brandon Mason, I'm going to be conducting the meeting tonight in lieu of Commissioner Thomas. If Commissioner Thomas shows up, I will go ahead and let him resume his role as chairman, and I'll go take part as a board member or a council member, which I guess I am anyway. So welcome, thank you for coming tonight. We're going to start our meeting with a invocation or thought, and we had Commissioner Webb down as giving that. He's not present. Do we have a volunteer for a thought or a invocation prayer? Okay, Commissioner Barker, could you do that, following which Commissioner Green will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thanks.
Our Father in heaven, we come and give you this planning commission meeting. We're grateful for this opportunity which we had to be here. One, those who are in attendance to hear what's going on in this everything. It has me help us remember who we are, what we stand for, and our purpose for being here to serve the city and all of the community. That we'll strive to make our decisions and thoughts along those lines and for the betterment of the people. And say, in Jesus Christ, amen.
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 Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Pledge
allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Commissioners, so by way of roll call, let it be noted that Commissioner Mason, Commissioner Nancarrow, Commissioner Green, and Commissioner Barker are present. Absent would be Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Webb, Commissioner Watson. Did I get that all?
Yeah.
I think so.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Okay, we're at the point of the meeting where we would disclose any conflicts of interest with tonight's agenda, conflicts of interest in general or ex parte communications, if there be any.
Nope.
Okay, let the record show there's no conflicts of interest disclosed. Item number 3 is public comments for items not on the agenda. If you're here for a specific agenda item, we'd ask that you reserve it for that part of the meeting. We'll give you ample opportunity to speak then. If you have a general comment for the planning commission, we'd entertain any comments now.
No.
I don't think pickleball is on your.
No,
Okay, yeah, please. So,
but we love pickleball.
yeah, please. So how this works is we just ask you to come to the pulpit. Don't be nervous. It's not a big deal. Grab the mic. You're going to say your name and your address or where you're resident of.
John Vanderwood,
Okay.
North Ogden, do my address.
It can be helpful. Do we need his address, Scott?
No, just.
Okay, just North Ogden.
Citizen North Ogden.
If you can pull that mic down, because these minutes are recorded.
Okay.
So there you go. Perfect.
It's been years since I've been to a planning and zoning committee that I used to attend them all the time. I've only lived here for about 20 years, but I graduated from Weaver's Day and I always wanted to come back. And I love this area. And the thing I'm going to bring up is really small to you guys. It's about pickleball. I wonder if you have any regulations for pickleball or that you have granted any permits for the courts in a neighborhood.
What, you meaning like a backyard sports court?
Right.
Is that?
If you've granted any, maybe it's too late for me to bring up some concerns.
Yeah, so I can-
We'd obviously entertain your concerns,
Sure.
and I'll turn it over to Mr. Hess, our planning director, to comment on.
Yeah.
On.
So we do permit sport courts. We have some fencing requirements that allow taller fences on the interior property lines. Lights need to be downward facing. So there's a few specific requirements for sport courts, but they're able to be done just like an RV pad or other large concrete surface. And it's limited to the amount of area of your lot that you can cover. So if somebody wanted to have a big, tennis court or something in their yard, those are permissible.
Yeah, they
It seems like
they
there's
should be,
setbacks
well,
as well.
tennis courts are permissible, I understand
Mhm.
that. But there's been a lot of lawsuits about the noise in neighborhood pickleball courts. I've got a whole bunch of lists of complaints and lawsuits.
So if you choose to leave something, so you have a whole bunch of options here, and I'll just kind of help you guide through this. So
Yeah, please.
you can, you're given a few minutes to give a presentation. So if you wanted to read them or summarize them, that would be applicable. If you wanted to leave them with the planning commission, then, or hand them out to us, then they have to be left with us and they become part of the official record of this meeting. Okay. So if you hand us anything, it becomes part of the record.
I'll do that. I just let you aware that there are lawsuits all over the country now for the noise that pickleball courts make. And there are solutions. There's soundboards. There's companies that advertise soundboards for blocking the sound. But I can leave this with you.
Okay.
It's just basically from the internet. And a lot of people have been complaining about them. I know that I was just telling my wife that I'm sort of into finance. And there was one finance guy that was saying that in an exclusive neighborhood in San Francisco, they put in pickleball courts. It's very exclusive. And they were complaining about it, trying to stop it because of the noise that they created. And one of the ladies that was protesting to do away with it had a $30 million estate that she was selling, but she had a pickleball court in her backyard. So it's a controversial thing.
Right.
We have a neighbor that's put in a cement pad, and they haven't put up fence or anything there. And I just wondered if they've already got a permit for it, there's not much I can do. But I think you should be aware that there's a lot of lawsuits.
So construction like that does require a building permit, I'm right, on that, Scott, right?
Land use permit.
So it does require a permit. That's not to say that
If
there's
they've
plenty of
already
people-
got the permit, then
I couldn't.
I think you
would
could-
have no idea.
I think you could check with the city to see if they do have the proper permit for that property. But I believe also in our ordinance, there is a noise curfew, isn't there? And they're out like certain hours, a certain
Yeah,
time of
yeah,
night. you
that's
have
what
to
they're
stop.
complaining about in these lawsuits. The noise level.
Yeah.
I think it was 45 decibels that they
Mhm.
were exceeding.
So sir, if I could summarize your comments,
Yes,
and then
please.
please, so you can correct me here, okay? So you're concerned about the increasing number of pickleball courts that are coming up in our town and others. And specifically regarding the sound, not necessarily the light or the use or drainage or anything like that. It's a sound thing primarily for you. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Basically, it's just in residential neighborhoods,
Mhm.
Well noted. So
I'm not against it. I just,
So we don't have any official motion or anything that we'll work on tonight, but your comments have been noted and we could look at that in a future ordinance or something like that. So,
And feel free to give me a call.
you're good.
yeah,
If you're gonna leave those, I'll take them as part of the record. If you don't want to, either way, but you feel free to give me a call as well.
Okay, thank you.
so yeah, leave them those and make them part of our official record of the meeting.
I thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So the planning commission is interested in hearing all sorts of opinions on things like that, and it does help, the comments like that on either side of an argument, are really helpful. Sorry to cut you off there, but are really helpful for us and even in future meetings and future discussions and stuff. So thank you very much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we're still open for public comment.
Chris Pulver, North Ogden. I've been going door to door a lot, just obviously campaigning. And just a couple of things some are questions, some are just FYI for you guys, since it pertains to planning. But I guess the first thing is there, I couldn't find it, but is there a certain water requirement when they're talking about high density housing or just development in general that, culinary wise, that the city has to figure out before they not rubber stamp, but they approve it? And I guess that means there's a yes to that.
Yeah, I can
Is
speak to
that by
that.
engineering? Go ahead.
Yeah, so Jason Rennie is our culinary water superintendent, and he keeps track of all of that with fire flows and other requirements. When a new development comes in, they're required to bring the water rights for the number of units that they're bringing. So they can't just be a developer with like a wish for 400 units over here. They have to bring with them 400 water rights that would meet that need. And then we have water zones in the city that include our big tanks that have to be sized for that. So we have done that with projected growth numbers, and the big tank that's being rebuilt up there by Mountain Road right now actually had held up a number of residential projects because we didn't have the fire flow capacity needed in order to permit more units in that area. So yeah, there's a whole calculus, and we track that on like a 20-year spectrum of growth and needs over time.
That's just one thing that quite a few people have pointed out. I haven't approved, so anyway, and I guess another thing that was interesting is I hit a geologist, and so he got to chatting about the development just below Mountain Road, and I haven't gotten too much detail on it, but I guess he had basically made it analogous to, was it South Jordan that had the slide? And he says exactly the same with the vibration. And he had some recommendations, but is that something that when you cut into the hillside, that's basically a engineer and the city kind of just, as long as it's stamped and.
Yeah. So I think that Draper City, their mayor, their city manager and their mayor both made some comments on this when that house fell off the hill this last year. And I think they said it really well, which is that we're in a property rights pro state. So if an engineer is willing to put their stamp on a civil, geotechnical study that says this is safe and you can build these houses safely in this area with these methods, we don't question that. So
Okay,
we accept, so we review and accept those engineering statements. And then we make sure that, if a house requires a specific foundation style or construction method, that they do that through the building permit, but we're essentially here to verify. And then if that house falls, you track the approvals on up, and it's that civil engineer who stamped that geotechnical that's left holding the.
And that's kind of what I told her. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't talking too far out the line. And then the last thing is, I don't say it's off the wall thing, but I think we've talked about it before. In development of commercial areas, the huge thing has been another type of sit down place that's a lot less fast foody. That's a weird thing to say, but and the big two, for whatever reason, are steakhouse and breakfast place.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, that was just something I've been picking up and tracking. If that makes sense. The other stuff is city council.
I would invite you to open either of those.
Sweet. I go for long. Somebody said Outback.
Yeah.
We desperately need a breakfast place.
I
Yeah,
know.
we do.
So, and then maintenance of vacant buildings. I guess when I was right at the corner of the poor people that were right next to gonna be Cooperstown, didn't know that Cooperstown was going there. Anyways, they pointed out that abandoned blue building there on the frontage of, I don't know if this is your guys's, but I just noticed that there's supposed to be, if there's anything vacant, you're supposed to be secured so people can't break into it, blah, blah, blah. And that's probably a city council thing, but.
It's worth bringing up. So that blue house right now is actually in Ogden City still.
Oh.
So that parcel is Ogden City, and the Cooperstown project is working on moving the municipal it's not an annexation, it's actually two cities touch, so we need to move the municipal line. The city has certified that petition to do it,
Right.
but it requires a number of other steps. So we're kind of in the window when that boundary line will be moved. But that one's I mean, you could contact Police Chief Quinney. That one's a known
Yeah.
issue. We've been dealing with squatters in that house as far as I know. And it's just been hard to keep secured, but right now it's physically in Ogden City, actually in their boundary.
Gotcha. And Cooperstown, I know it's approved, but has there been any movement? I mean, I know I saw the
So
little,
that boundary needs to be moved. There's an
Yeah.
apartment sitting right on the city
Yeah.
boundary line. So yeah, they've been working with Ogden City the last 2 years while I've been here on that.
okay, cool. Well, the guy can see his sunsets from the blue. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Okay, we're still public comment, excuse me. And Mr. S, do we have anybody online?
No.
Okay, so no comments will come from online.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thanks for
coming.
coming.
Appreciate your listening.
okay. I'm guessing that ends our public comments. We'll go ahead and close the public comments section. Thank you, guys. Good input, and we'll take that into consideration. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to administrative item 4, which is a application for the Little Dreamers Preschool. Approximately 571 East, 3300 North.
It's supposed to be daycare. It was preschool.
Okay, well, I'll let you guys speak in just a second. So we'll be presented first by Mr. Hess, and he's gonna give us the rundown. And how this works is you as the applicant will have the ability to come address us, and then any public that want to comment on it, same thing. Okay,
Okay, so thank you very much, planning commission members. We do have the applicant here who's come to represent this. This is the second one of these that we've had come in front of the planning commission, and you had mentioned that, we don't have a ton to review in these, but they're one of those things that it requires a site plan, and the planning commission is identified as the body that reviews all administrative site plans in the city, with exception to land use permits, minor sheds, small building permit applications, those sort of things that don't constitute a site plan. Home occupations are permitted in the city. This is a residential R110 zoned piece of ground. And the city does have standards in the ordinance regarding home daycares and preschools. There's really the big difference between the two is the number of students permitted, and that would have, or the number of people in the home permitted for kids or anybody coming. And then that would track like the math back for how much of the house can be used or how much of the backyard needs to be used. In either case, this one meets the maximum requirement essentially for that. So they'd be able to run it as a daycare, which permits more kids than the preschools. I believe I've double checked the ordinance, but it's like 13 versus 16, and they just want to maximize the number of kids. The applicant provided a basic site plan of their house. I think that they did really a good job with the number one thing that these become is they can become traffic nightmares depending on the number of classes you're running and what the drop-off schedule is. But having a staggered drop-off where you walk the children out to the car, the parents stay in the car, is going to really limit or eliminate a lot of that traffic concern. So staff doesn't have, we really don't have a lot to say on this one as far as any concerns or any additional standards that we see to impose, that they can meet the ordinance as it is. So if the planning commission sees anything else that we can do under our administrative purview, we're not legislating, we can't make up new stuff outside of the ordinance, but it's whether or not the application meets the ordinance. And then we'll move this forward with their business license and get them taken care of.
great, thank you. Okay, would you like to add anything to that? Okay, so no comments from the applicant. Any other public comments about this? Okay, I do have a question for you. Have you guys, do you have a plan for, I know where you live. I watched your house be rebuilt. So do you have a plan for drop off? Have you instructed the parents how to do that? And what's your plan?
Yeah, they'll just drive up, we'll watch them, and I'll just walk the child out to their.
So everybody drops
And
off,
it's
picks up
big,
different.
yeah, it's all different.
Okay, so are you gonna have them come eastbound, pick up and then take a right and head out, or
Yeah, so like in the winter time, we're more worried about winter time.
Mhm.
In winter time.
Will you actually speak to the mic? 'Cause
Yeah.
the folks who are online, it's just
You
not
want me to?
it's just not recorded, so.
Thanks, Scott.
And if you'll say your names and if you're a resident of North Ogden,
Luke Nelson and what?
if you're a resident of North Ogden.
I am a resident. So, in the winter time, because obviously we have the whole front lawn, if there was like even one, usually there's only one person time anyway. But basically, in the winter time, we're only gonna have the path of the driveway, so she's gonna help get the kids out of the car, and then I'm gonna take them in, if we do have several people lined up. But more than likely, we won't even have people lined up. But if we did at one point and drop off just to kind of keep things flowing, it's more for the kids' safety than anything.
What's the age you're gonna be having for daycare?
Usually it goes up to like 12.
Are you taking infants or
They will let us have one more infant, but right now we're,
sticking around 3 years old and up?
yeah, so
Probably
the,
18 months old.
yeah, they'll let us have one, and like we have what is he, one?
Yeah. 1 year old.
We have a 1-year-old right now, that is our kid, and we just don't want to take another one.
Hmm.
Luke,
I don't blame you.
I don't know if the planning commission has this purview to dictate this, but would you guys be amenable if we approve this based on the condition that drop-offs would not be allowed on the other side of 3300? So my concern.
Oh, yeah.
My concern is that.
I don't want anybody.
3300 is a more busy road than, what is it, 550 that you're on also? Because you're on a corner, right?
Yeah,
575.
Okay, so 575, I don't have many concerns, even though it's steep. 3300, traffic does get sometimes fast going down there, and it's going downhill, in the late afternoon, you're looking into the sun. And so I would have a concern myself as a parent, just
right.
with children going across the street. So I don't know, Mr. Hess, if we have the ability to make a contingent on,
Yeah, I think you
okay.
could.
I would like to see that recommendation in our.
Yeah, that'd be-
approval.
I mean, we would say that anyway.
Yeah, drop off, well,
And then,
this would
most
give it a
people-
little more teeth.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you would say the city.
So
will
I can,
recommend-
yeah, I can actually say it to the parents.
Uh-huh.
So that'd actually be better for us,
So-
obviously.
So I really have no concerns with your business plan, with your location, like I said, I watched your home be rebuilt. So, with anything like that, but I would prefer to see me personally, to see,
That's a good thought. I mean, there's plenty of other parking on the side street if it came to that.
yeah, they're on that nice corner, so they do have.
Yeah,
two
I
places
would
where-
prefer them not to park the other side too. So if I had like a rule, that'd be awesome.
That would be the north side, correct?
North side of 33.
Yeah,
And what the ordinance says, just I pulled it up, is that parking and drop off shall be provided to satisfy the requirements of 11-18, which is our standard parking. You have two off-street parking spaces, so you meet the parking requirement. Safe drop off of children is the responsibility of the daycare operator and shall be illustrated in the site plan application. So we kind of like slough off that responsibility to the daycare operator once we issue that business license. But I think that making that recommendation and me writing that into a notice of decision is perfectly within the
Okay.
planning commission's.
And it probably helps you.
It sounds like the
Yeah,
applicant's in favor of that.
that'd be awesome for me if I could say, you have to do it this way.
And eliminate a lot of the safety issues by they're going to walk to the car and bring it back. And go around the parents do. So the kid's not gonna be free to just run.
Right, and we don't already, right? We don't just oh, there's your dad, go get him. We don't do that. We already tell them, hey, you gotta come get your kid, or we have to take them to your car. Because I don't want, obviously, like you said, I don't need a kid dying on my
Kids
watch.
That would be bad.
Not a great business model, really.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, anything else for us?
That's it.
Thank you. Any other questions for them?
I don't.
Okay, any discussion about the matter?
Should entertain a motion.
I would entertain a motion. Thanks, you guys.
I recommend that we approve the site plan of the Little Dreamers Daycare with the additional condition that there's no drop-off parking allowed on the north side of 3300 North.
Any other discussion about it? I think we're ready for a vote.
Maybe a question. I see the north side of 3300, the street just to the east of, which one is that?
3,300 is to the, on the top there.
What's
That's the
going
wider
down, what's
one?
going north and south?
It's 575, I think.
So that's our house. We just don't want them parking over here
Right.
and then running across the street.
Your driveway faces north.
Yeah, this is my driveway here. So we are gonna try to, just in case, we are gonna try to actually keep a couple spots open, even in the winter.
Mhm.
Because in the summer, we can pull up anywhere, obviously, but in the winter, we wanna, if they can pull in the driveway, we want them to, if they have to.
I just want to make sure that 575 east
Mhm.
did that, and have access to the property. That way.
There is
no
access to
chance of
575
parking
east.
there, just let the kids off.
So 575 East does abut their property.
That's what I was
So
wondering.
there, if you were concerned about all cross-street parking, then we could put a condition and it would say nothing north of 30, on the north side of 3,300 or the east side of 575. If you guys want to put that in there,
No, I-
having known the area well,
Yeah.
I know 575 isn't very busy,
Yeah.
but it's totally rational to have that in there.
Nice, I don't think it's necessary, but it'd just be nice to have it there. I don't think it's a necessary thing.
Well,
I just
We
want to
have
know
a-
where the driveway was in respect to that street as long as after.
certainly.
Would you like an amendment to the
We
motion?
we
or-
have a motion, so it wouldn't need to be amended if we were going to write that in there.
You'd have to vote on the motion first.
Okay,
Motion would have,
the way to do that would, for the motion to be voted on and
Okay,
declined,
fine.
and then we would create a new motion with that in there. So,
Okay.
we could amend the motion.
I
Couldn't we?
think so.
We haven't voted yet, so we could
Yeah.
amend the
If
motion.
it's friendly- if it's a friendly
How
amendment.
strongly do you
Correct.
feel about it? It's not a
It
busy
wasn't a
street.
Strong feeling, it's just
Okay.
more of a curiosity sake.
Okay.
Just,
Guess I have less concern about people parking there, but.
Yeah, I want to make sure,
Yeah.
if that's just not someplace a guy's going to park, see a kid, run around the corner.
Yeah,
It's really not a busy street.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
even-
not something
It's
we've done
not.
for other.
but if you feel strongly about it, Commissioner
No, no,
Barker, I'll
I know,
amend
it's
it.
just- it's
Okay.
just a curiosity
So even when we
question.
had preschool and we dropped, and we told everybody dropping off and picking up at the same time, nobody ever parked over there. So it would probably be a non-issue anyway.
So,
No, I don't need to have it amended.
Okay.
okay. Further discussion on pausing for any other discussion? Okay, let's go ahead and vote. Commissioner Barker, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Green?
Yes.
Commissioner Nancaro?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. You got your preschool.
Daycare.
We'll write a notice of decision, then Colleen will get your business license out, but you're essentially like legal to operate with this approval. You'll receive your license. It'll be a few days. I talked to Colleen about it today, but you'll get your business license. Thank you all.
Thanks, you guys. for that.
Thank you guys. Hopefully you get to go home.
You know what?
Okay, item number 5 is a public hearing. To align our code with the provisions of the Utah State Code. By Mr. Hess.
Thank you. So we didn't meet for a while, so now we have all of the public hearings and all the zoning text amendments that have been building up on my desk. So we're gonna plow through 4 of them. As a reminder, we're doing legislative items tonight, the next 4. So Planning Commission is in a recommending position to City Council on all of these, and then it'd be taken forward. So a few of these ordinance amendments that we're gonna do are sort of regulatory updates that we've needed to do based on state code changes. Another one, we're just finding issues with using the current code as we kind of redid that code and readopted it. So in this particular case, this is alignment with state code. Myself and our city recorder, Ryan Santoro, have reviewed the provisions in state code regarding public notice provisions. And I've prepared, well, I gave you the link to the state code for that chapter itself. And then I went through 11-3 hearing and publication notice provisions and added language in red in the code here where we had deficiencies in our code from what state code had, or there were misalignments. And I believe this is everything. I would ask for Planning Commission to provide maybe some friendly like wiggle room if me and the city recorder and John Call realized that we missed, a small section or a little bit of language between state code and this, that we we don't need to bring it back to planning commission. If you want to see it in its final form, that's fine. We can bring it back, but this is one that has been a bit of a swinging pendulum for the state on what the right amount of notice is. And they've reinstituted things like the number of feet around any one use, so like this, there's a class B notice that's called out in here, there's class A notices, and who you notice at what times and when, and it's becoming more specific. And I think that we're probably going to see some of this stuff peeled back actually in the next code iteration for next year, because the state code went a little bit far in some of these cases, I think, for administrative items, but
In that case, would you be interested in repealing ours as well? Or would you?
Yeah,
just keep
so
it
we
with the
would-
More strict?
no, we would go back. I mean, a good example is in here. I think I actually took it out. Like this is a line that I thought about today, and we may need to take out that there are no notice requirements to adjacent property owners except for amendments to vacating a subdivision. I don't know if that's actually fully true now. I think there's a few other instances where we do need to notify those adjoining
Could this
residents.
not be written to say, we adhere to the state code with the following addendums? And then
Yeah,
when
you
as
can-
that changes, this doesn't need to be rewritten every time?
Yeah, you can do that. That's another way to do it, but if they really change the state, it's problematic one way or the other,
Sure.
honestly. Like
Yeah.
it's just, and then you're causing people to have the like choose your own adventure, go and find it on your own for how to do this.
Yeah, that's true.
But at any rate, just know that our notices will become, we'll do more courtesy notices, we'll do more mailings. For instance, like this daycare wasn't mailed to property owners within 300 feet. We could have likely given them a courtesy notice, but we didn't, because administrative applications in our code aren't listed as something that we do that for.
What
So
that means to us, if I may interject, from experience, I think what that means is more, and I'm not saying we should, I'm in favor of more notifications than less. But the reality is that means more public here
Yep.
for the meetings, because there's a lot of misunderstanding when they get a letter from them.
Yep.
We'll say, hey, we're gonna rezone this, and then somehow that gets warped into, oh, do you know the city's putting in a sewer plant across the street? And then people show up, and that's great, as long as we know what they're gonna come in a little miseducated.
Yeah,
And then we can educate them, and they usually leave fine.
Yep.
Once they realize what's really going on.
but they're upset when they arrive.
They usually are afraid or upset, or some strong emotion is bringing them
The-
here.
from what I've seen the last 15 years, the state had been on a path of trying to clarify what public notice, well, give the notice to the public when they are at the position where they have meaningful ability to provide input. And goes back to our state ombudsman, Brent Bateman trainings, that if you're going to have an administrative land use application, like a preschool come into your city, that's essentially a business license with this one additional site plan step, and they meet all of the requirements, our ability to say no is eliminated. It's an administrative approval. So to give the public, empower the public with the feeling that they're going to be able to make public comments that can change the decision is really frustrating.
Right.
Versus like a legislative decision where we're making recommendations to the council, they can provide a lot of meaningful public input that can change the decision once it gets to the decision maker's hands.
No, I think
That's
completely
excellent
true.
point, yeah.
Just like the in-house daycare, I mean, I think that's a great example. I personally really strongly dislike that ordinance as a property owner. I think it's a horrible thing to have a daycare moving next door with all the noise and sound. People are gonna get those notices, they're gonna show up thinking they can do something about it,
Right.
but the reality is our only choice, at least at this juncture, is to approve
Right.
the application.
Right.
So I totally hear what you're saying,
Right.
because it is just going to make people feel like they can do something that they can't do.
Sure.
My only question, just as you're kind of working through this, is did you just essentially, you're only adding exactly kind of what you're required to by law, no extra things that make the city have to jump through extra hoops or, okay.
No,
perfect.
very much not. And mostly because for those public notice postings and mailings, we require the applicant to pay for those. So they bring in a stamped envelope for us. So if state code's going to require the mailing to 1,000 people, that's $600 to an applicant. We're not trying to burden applicants with that.
Gotcha.
It is 1,000 envelopes that we stuff. That's been a big part of my job the last 15 years, is like arts and craft day, 15 days before the meeting to stuff all the envelopes, which we haven't had to do a lot of. And we'll be doing more postings on site. And if, I'll talk to our city recorder about the best way to do that. We'll get some something, chloroplast signs or something that will put what is going on. Those are all positive things to help the public understand what's going on. But yeah, it's public noticing has been a bit of a balancing act, just to make sure that people are able to come in and provide the comments that they can to inform decisions, right?
Mhm.
So we don't, you've had a chance to read through this. This is in effect, the staff report is operating kind of like a draft ordinance that the council will receive with the red lines here. If you have any questions, I'm happy to field them. Otherwise, we're just attempting to align it with state code.
I'd like to change it, I read through.
Yeah, it didn't, nothing alarming in there for sure.
No, other than just, like you kind of mentioned, just it seems like the state is really putting you guys through the ringer with a lot of details on this, which we have no control over, but that's a little frustrating. So that's why I just want to make sure we're only doing what we absolutely have to do. I know that sounds bad, but
No, it's a good
it's the
point.
policy we apply at my school when we're trying to do policies. Aligning them with the state, we want to do the absolute minimum, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Right.
Only because then your hands aren't tied later.
Sure.
So.
I always do the absolute minimum of my job also.
But no, I mean, it seems like you just caught what was missing, so. Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Scott? Okay, any public comment on this?
I think with this
We
public
need to-
hearing.
We need
Oh,
to
that's what we
open
do.
a
Yeah,
public
we need to
hearing.
open a public hearing, that's right. Entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
We make a motion here, open the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of opening the public hearing, voice vote?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the public hearing is open. Nobody online?
No.
Okay, nobody chooses to speak.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion is second, all in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Okay, public hearing's closed. Okay, any other comments on the matter before we vote? Okay, well, first, I guess we need a motion before we vote on anything.
I motion that we recommend amending the North Ogden City Code 11-3, hearing of publication notice provisions to align with the requirements in the Utah State Code as was presented. Is that sufficient?
That's great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
We have a motion on the table.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Carroll seconds that. Okay, any other comment? Discussion prior to a vote? Okay, Commissioner Carroll, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Barker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay, the recommendation will move on to the city council. Okay, item number 6, I don't know how this got back to us, but we're gonna talk about site triangles again. I don't know where this came from, but I'm interested to know.
So again, in using the city code, this is an example where we will eliminate most specific references out of the site triangle and push it over to our public works standard. So this has been an issue in our code for the last 2 years while I've been here, that the public works standards were adopted with a converging 30 by 100 site triangle. And we had in a few spots in our code, 2 specifically here, where the 40 by 40 site triangle still existed. So we've got one located in the residential fencing regulations, and then another call out to the site triangle in design and location of parking spaces. So the size of the site triangle has been eliminated from the code at this point. It'll just say typical site triangle as referenced in the city's public works
So is
standards.
this something we likely should have caught the last time we reviewed this?
Yeah,
So it's a cleanup item.
It is. And then if the city public works standards change, they have to be adopted by ordinance. So there is a public forum and a public process for those to be done, but we can change it in one location and we don't have to change it several places in our code. The big difference, and we really can't in this meeting, you could compare the merits of the 2 different types of site triangles if, as a planning commission cared or wanted to weigh in on that, but the public works standards in this case will rule because they rule on all of our right of ways and our roadways. But the kind of net effect of this is it's slightly less restrictive doing the site triangle in these converging 30 by 100s than it is just a straight 40 by 40. We also, our current 40 by 40 runs at property line. So it's actually way in here interior to the lot. and this runs at the top back of curb. So the measurement's easier to go do in the field. And it's a little less restrictive for plantings. It's a little more practical and easy to administer. And it's what we've had in our, it's the way Public Works has been administering this, or code enforcement has. We just had the two incorrect references.
Yeah, I think most of us on the planning commission were involved in this. Commissioner Green, I don't know if this was predates you a little bit, but yeah, those points were all well made, and we hashed this.
Many times.
Really, yeah. So, okay, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Scott?
Nope.
Okay.
I don't believe we need a motion to
We need a
open a
public
public hearing. We
Oh,
just
is that
need a
right?
motion to close it. Is that
Okay.
correct?
Yeah, so you can.
I
can just open.
I open the public hearing.
Chris Bolden, North Ogden. I guess the one question I had, and I was trying to read through it quickly, but I couldn't find it, was the restriction, not restriction, but as you go up a hill, that 2-foot rule, it's not, I guess, applicable. I guess that's the question, because in there it says you can't have anything 2 feet tall because it obstructs somebody's view. But if you're on a slant, 2 feet doesn't do anything. Because I think somehow, I can't remember what it was, but you know, I have a wall right there, and it definitely 2 feet in that little triangle thing, but you can't tell because of the slant of the road.
Yeah, and
So
it's,
is it in there?
no, it just, we would measure that height perpendicular to the point wherever you measure it. So if,
The marker board.
yeah,
I swear you did it on the board.
if the hill, you know, if the hill is going uphill and the wall is 2 feet tall for the entire length of that distance, like it runs parallel at 2 feet to the roadway, even though if you were to measure at 100 feet down, that wall is effectively 8 feet tall.
Yeah.
You measure it just perpendicular to from whatever point you're measuring it.
Okay.
because
And
we
it's really
can't-
about visibility.
Yeah, it is, and we do our best at whatever point, like you're near the stop bar, the stop line for a stop sign, that's where you're really trying to get those obstructions as low as possible.
The only one that I really worry about is the one on, it's 575 east and 3100 north. It's the Stoddards. I don't know how they got that fence there, because I have to inch out almost into the roadway to look at
You know, we
it. Kind of
did-
like the same thing on 2600.
We debated that, because there's a few of those, and
There's a few.
what we landed on, and, or what was told to me, and I ended up buying it, is that, it's actually sometimes safer to do the inch out.
Yeah.
And rather than think you have full visibility and stuff, so sometimes, I'm not saying we need obstructions, right, but that inching out is actually a valid method to get around the obstruction.
Just making sure my.
This example you just gave,
Thank you very
isn't there
much.
something also in like the retaining wall ordinance that addresses that as well?
That I can find.
Yeah.
Trailers. Okay, any other comments online?
Yeah, online.
No online comments.
Okay, I motion that we close the public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Hi.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the public hearing is closed. Any other discussion on it? We need a motion. Do need a motion?
I'll make the motion to recommend to the legislative application. They'll make a motion to amend the site triangle reference to Title 11. As outlined in the notes.
Okay, so can I clarify your motion?
Sure.
You move that we recommend to the city council that
Yes,
the legislative item be amended as stated.
yes,
okay.
thank you.
I second that.
Okay, a motion and second by Commissioner Green. Okay, any other discussions? Commissioner Green, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Barker, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Nancaro?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, that recommendation will move on to the city council. Great. Okay, item number 7 looks interesting. Recommendation on an application to amend the fencing standards to consider 8-foot tall deer fences. I'd be interested to know the backstory on this one too, but I
Yeah.
think I can understand it.
So we
8 feet too tall. Right?
We had a city council member who requested this be considered by planning commission and be brought forward. So there's some interest at the city council level to consider deer fencing standards for the city. And I looked around, I think some cities use a like whatever the first fence in is rule we don't continue to administer like interior yard fencing. But the strict interpretation of our code would be that even if you had a 6-foot perimeter fence, if 10 feet back from that, if you were to put in like an 8 or 10-foot tall fence, that would be considered a fence, unless you can make a real strong argument that it's some sort of like yard art or other barrier or something along those lines.
Trellis.
Yeah, trellises, if it's a standalone and it doesn't block the path on something, maybe that,
So
You know, that
are you
works.
are you mentioning a fence that's not on the property line?
yeah.
That meets a setback requirement?
Yeah, well,
of a
even if
building?
well, you don't, we have 0 setback requirements on fencing. So you can put your fence on property line, but if you elect to put your fence 10 feet back from property line, we still require you to get a land use permit to do it.
Okay.
And be within the 6-foot requirement.
Yeah, and
People
so,
looking to do that to surround their gardens and what they're doing.
yeah, see, and that's, if they're surrounding just a garden area, is that a fence? The way a fence is a fence, if they're trying to protect their entire backyard, like this one's one that takes a little bit of administration when we do it, but in reading it, I just figured we'll put together some ordinance language for up to 8-foot tall fences that surround properties at their 6-foot line. The one thing that I don't love about this, and I actually found this code that was referenced in more than one location, but it's North Logan City has this specific language adopted. This is actually, they're numbering everything here. And as you get down into it, there's a provision that deer fences up to 10 feet tall may be located on residential lots by conditional use permit. And I don't like conditional use permits because thinking about it, what are the rational or reasonable conditions you would impose that are mitigating the impacts to their neighboring property owner? And I don't know if I can think of any.
Yeah.
So if anything, staff would say strike that or just let fences be up to some certain height, and then,
Or do nothing.
or do
Do
nothing.
nothing.
And then the other, in here, the standards is any fence over 6 feet height is constructed with, and then it's very specific. So it has deer fencing requirements, the material that the fence can be. So this is kind of like an attempt to cause no harm to the deer. You don't want something really flimsy like a chicken wire that a deer is going to jump up onto and get caught and have a real, have a bad time hunting on the fence. And also just discourage generally the deer from jumping over it. So from my research with Department of, this is not my area of expertise, so I got to read some articles about this, but deer generally won't jump a fence if they can't see their landing, because they'll attempt to protect their own legs. But I would imagine there are people in the city who have had deer in their backyard and they have a 6-foot vinyl fence. So whether they can see over it at some high point on another yard or jump from like a uphill lot to a downhill lot, we know this is an issue. We have an urban deer population for sure. So I leave this with you in your consideration. This is something for you to talk about. I don't know that this has to be the final iteration. This is a really clean version of a code that you could renumber and essentially adopt. But really wanted your opinion and, weigh out your options, and then we can bring back anything if you have some specific standards or concerns you want us to write into it.
Okay. If I may express a concern early before our discussion, I don't feel like, so let's see, we're missing 3 planning commissioners. And this seems like a heftier topic. I would almost rather see it be tabled rather than, if there's an appetite to take this on tonight, and then I certainly will do that. I just would also say that we could do nothing we could decide to do nothing, make no recommendation to the city council. We could decide to adopt any of this, or we could table it. In other words, we could reject, approve, or we could table it and discuss it later. And I think any 3 of those is valid. Let's see, what do we have? We don't have a,
We have a public hearing.
we have
on
a
this.
public hearing. Okay,
They're all public hearings. So
Okay.
you would hold the public hearing, and then you could
certainly.
close it, but if that's the case, you could make a motion to hear this at another meeting, it's kind of like time undetermined, because we don't know if this will make it back on the next meeting or not. And then we would repost and hold another public hearing.
Okay, I would recommend we have a public hearing and we get the public's input on this item before we discuss it. And then we'll take it from there. Does that sound okay? Okay, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing.
Chris Pulper, North Ogden, it's one of my favorite. deer, I think you said it best, deer will get into whatever, as long as there's something nice in there. But my point is here is that too much. I think it's just, we've got enough ordinances as it is. And if you're talking interior to someone that already has a fence, what's the point? I think it's dumb. I'll be blunt, but, and the enforceability of it, it goes, same thing as the retaining wall height.
Yeah.
What happens, I mean, that's just another thing. And if you build it 10 feet, deer are gonna eat what they eat. I try to shoot them away, I try to block those stuff in, it just doesn't work. I mean, I had Bradley actually built a nice little fence thing, but again, it's, to me, it's, I'm saying unsightly, but you have to live with what it looks like, and it may or may not. Somebody was talking about, elected official was talking about those big 4x8 banners turn into really nice fences for your, or anyway, the deer won't jump those. Anyway, that's something else but my suggestion is, got enough ordinances on fences, leave it, anyway, that's my.
Well noted, thank you. Anybody else online? Okay, we have
Make a
our-
motion to close the public hearing.
all in favor of closing the public hearing? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, discussion?
So I guess, just thinking about the public comment, the one thing though is that there are fencing ordinances, they are fairly prohibitive and restrictive. I can see a situation where if you had a garden and you're just trying to make your fence a little bit taller, if that does work to keep deer out, I mean, I think that's a reasonable thing to want to do. And as it's currently written, like Scott articulated, if I'm understanding this correctly, it doesn't matter if it's interior to your lot, you're still under the 6-foot high rule. So, I mean, maybe it's not the craziest thing to let someone add a little more height to protect the garden. So that would be my initial thought or question to the rest of you about what you think.
My thoughts are that the 6-foot height limitation was defined when we thought fences run on property lines, right? And because when you're on a sidewalk, you don't want this gray wall shining next to you, right? You don't want maybe something giant shading out, your sunlight from your yard on your neighbor and stuff. I would think that interior structures should adhere to the setbacks that the buildings do, right? Meaning, so I don't know how to write that, but I'm not opposed to interior structures being taller than 6 feet. And just because it's a fence, I don't think it should be.
Right.
There might be some language we could craft to that, because that would allow up to 10 foot tall, 3 feet away from the property line, just as if it's a tough shed or something like that. So, and then if it's just a
The
chicken, if it's a deer fencing 3 feet back from your 6-foot fence,
The difference with a fence though is it's 60 feet long instead of a tough shed is 12 feet long,
I know.
right?
True.
And so I mean, I just want that out
True.
there, that
Good point.
you're talking about a long thing. Now, if we wanted to say, hey, a fence around, if you have, I can imagine if you have an acre and a half, and then you have a 1,200 square foot garden, yeah, you may want to put an 8-foot fence around that, maybe. And if it's all interior and there's no harm to anyone there. I hate to see us be that city that won't allow that.
Right.
On the other hand,
Yeah. It's true.
Guess my comments are this is very similar to Mr. Culver's. It's, we've spent a lot of time refining this fence ordinances over the years, many times, I feel like. And one thing that always comes up, and it's right here, that they put in the vision of North Ogden. North Ogden will continue to be a community of beautiful homes, friendly people, capitalize on impressive settings beneath Ben Lomond Peak. The reason I live here is because these beautiful mountain views, right? So, we're building further up the mountain. Okay, let's add an 8-foot fence to that. And it's just blocking views. It's just cutting up these beautiful views and kind of changing the character. And I guess I know human nature so well that they interpret this as, oh, well, this 8-foot fence is because it's a deer fence.
Yeah, exactly. That's
true.
exactly
That
what will
is
happen.
true.
I
That
mean,
is
let's
true.
not kid
You're
ourselves.
not wrong. You're not
Okay.
wrong. All my fences.
So,
are gonna be 8
And the
feet.
other thing I have to bring it back to myself is, I used to live next to a big field before they built houses there, but I have a 5-foot fence. I've got fruit trees, I've got a garden, I've got bird feeders. Not one time it ever did deer ever hop over my fence.
That's true. They chow on
I
my
agree
front
with you
yard.
saying right there. I agree with you saying you get an interior fence that sits behind somebody's house, it's already blocking views. That fence on the interior around the yard is not going to have any impact on views. And
Well,
that's-
I
that's
guess
what-
if the
that's what-
language talks about you can just build it around the garden or some,
see, I
limited,
agree with that.
you know,
We
limited
dealt with fences, we
property.
never dealt with gardens.
Right,
We never dealt with fences around, gardens. we never brought, that was
No.
never brought into discussion, was never thought of.
that's true. But as this, you know, sample ordinance is written,
It has,
it's just that you can have an 8-foot fence and
Absolutely.
it can be vinyl fencing, PVC coated,
You can have a-
galvanized,
we do
plastic
have a-
resin.
Like that around it, around the lot itself.
Yeah.
That I don't agree. with.
Yeah.
But for an interior fence.
Mhm.
We do allow interior fences to exceed if it's around the sports court.
Yeah, that's one very specific section that we have.
And that,
So-
that I can handle, but around
The whole property.
I would suggest, I'm not I take everybody off here, so.
Mm.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm not a biologist, but I play one on TV. So, but I would think that, and that's why, I would think that deer are gonna follow passive least resistance anyway, right? So if you have a 6-foot fence around your backyard, well, they could get in your backyard, absolutely could, and sometimes will. But is it likely that they're always gonna be there? I mean,
It's gonna be a rare thing.
I would think they would walk down the neighbors that doesn't have a fence, or that has something in the front yard. That would be Are they really?
I've been about run over a few times, but see, I don't have my side yard, there's no fence.
Yeah,
Well, that
there's
is
a
the
way to
reason.
get it
That's the
open.
reason. So
Yeah.
Now they go through my yard, around the corner, and the other thing.
I can't grow a fir tree.
I just let the deer be the deer.
Right.
I can't grow a fir tree or tulips in my front yard. The deer have them, I mean,
The certain height, about that height, short.
right,
that height,
yeah,
say-
I'd have to bring in a 6-foot tall tree to get it started, because they just take it, but I have all sorts of tasty stuff in my backyard,
Mhm.
never had a deer in there,
Same.
and.
And I used to have a herd of deer that lived in the field right
Yeah.
next door.
So I hate to see us write anything and then have, like you said, make this get out of jail free card, oh, well, that's a deer
yeah,
fence.
because that is absolutely.
It's
Although,
human nature.
If you wanted to wrap your garden and you have setbacks, and you want to put that thing 12 feet tall, I don't think that hurts anybody.
Yeah.
So,
With significant
In fact, I
setbacks.
agree, I put some around some light stuff, so like 4 feet tall, there would concept.
Yeah.
Never bother it. Like our light fruit trees, it's only about 3 feet tall. And then bother the fruit tree.
okay. So our public hearing's over. I'm gonna go ahead and, because you're such a nice participant in our meetings, I'm gonna go ahead and waive the requirement, let you make a comment, as long as you make it to the podium.
I guess just the point of if it has been a public outcry, in my opinion, I don't think there has been, you know, I mean, I haven't seen anybody show up to city council and yell and scream and, you know, something like that. People just do it, you know, and I think, you know, per exception, you know, I mean, if you're behind your interior, I mean, people are building chicken coops and all these other things, and it's just happening. And to me, that's the property rights thing, is that you can, you know, within certain parameters, you can build whatever the crap you want. And so that, to me, that's, you start getting into more code and more code,
Mhm.
you have to enforce it. We're not enforcing the stuff we got currently, so. I don't know. That's just where I headed, you know, more stuff, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna be controlling it, period.
That was Mr. Chris Colbert.
I guess one quick thing I just noticed on the North Logan, in case we ever move this direction, is I actually do kind of like how they specify what type of material you could use if you were to do this, mostly because the general plan mentions the word beautiful multiple times, like I
Right.
had mentioned earlier. But number 2, galvanized or stainless steel wire fencing. If your neighbor was to loop that all around the top of their fence, I think that's a big eyesore. So it's just one thing I wanted to note. That doesn't sound
That
like
looks
it.
like a prison.
Yeah, like
Their
if I
fences
read
aren't
that, it was like,
attractive.
ooh, I just don't think that fits the beautiful concept from the general plan.
Let's just keep it in the kids out.
Yeah.
So we can continue our discussion. Do we have a motion? And I would suggest valid motions would be to recommend this, to not recommend this, to recommend to the city council that the ordinance stay as is, or to table it.
I'll make a motion that we recommend to the city council that we make no change to our current ordinance.
We'll second that.
Hold on one second, please.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. That doesn't mean that's the direction it's gonna go. That's a motion that we have something actionable to work towards.
Right. We can
So-
talk about.
So let's go ahead and debate that.
So I guess one question, I don't know, just going back to, I don't think your idea of tabling was terrible. I know it's not the exact motion that we have right now, but in terms of I had to vote yes or no on this. It would be interesting to, I personally am having a hard time relating to adding the deer fence, but I'm imagining that there's probably people in North Ogden who feel very passionately that the deer are a huge pest.
Somebody asked it to be on our agenda tonight.
Right, exactly. And so I am curious what our other planning commissioners might think. And like what, their surrounding communities are experiencing.
They
their
could always show up to the meeting.
True. I mean, they're not here, so we could vote.
We're happy.
They did have the agenda.
Yeah.
We're happy if people in the community have complained about the deer in their yards, but not specifically about gardens and that, just deer in their yards. At that point, once you know, you live where you live.
And this is another ordinance, however, it's actually loosening the current really restrictive one, although still expanding.
So I would,
So,
as just to kind of guide this, I would encourage commissioners who would like to see something different proposed to vote no on the item and go ahead and make that proposal. Other thoughts or comments on this?
I just have a little bit of heartburn. I'm really passionate about it. Where they want to do something on an interior yard with the offsets and that, fence protect your garden. I have no issues with that, but to surround the whole yard, I do.
So
I'm not sure
Did
if
it run
they're
out?
changing anything.
right, 'cause
You know
it's
what? I think it would come down to how the police would administer it. And my guess is if
would
there's
you
a
enforce
6-foot fence and then there's something interior like a chicken coop or whatever, we would have to make a determination on it being a structure and how tall it is and how
Yeah.
far within the property line. And I don't know that we've had many of these code enforcement complaints. Sport courts specifically, we have had questions about, but typically someone who's spending sport court money gets their land use permit, they get it done correctly, and we have an approval in there. I'm a little hesitant to write dual standards just because I think they're going to be difficult to administer, and future planners who may come might question or wonder why we did or didn't do what we're doing. So if it's perimeter fencing around a yard, being able to go taller than 6 feet, that's really easy to write in. It's easy to administer. We can do it through a land use permit process. If someone wants to put up some 4x4 posts and chicken wire in their garden at 8 feet tall, it would require a really concerned neighbor to call in order for anybody to deal with that code enforcement wise.
true.
And in this regard, if that was such a concern and such a hot topic, the current code would give the city teeth to step in, really,
That's
where
true.
If it was a problematic
Cleaning up
eyesore or
the
something.
margins,
Yeah, if somebody really went overboard
Yeah.
and did
Yeah.
something crazy.
it seems unlikely, unless you really just hate your neighbor, which, I mean, that does happen out there.
But
And you
that-
just wanted to go around and find technicalities to burn them on.
True.
You'd have to be pretty angry if your neighbor was something dumb.
And that does happen.
Yeah.
That does happen.
Or it'd have to be really an eyesore monstrosity.
Right.
That shouldn't be
Which-
And
there.
if it was an eyesore, then we'll give the city teeth to enforce it.
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion that I like the motion, and I'm gonna call for a vote shortly, but I do like the motion, I think.
Well, I think this conversation just barely is helpful to help frame thinking on this
Mhm.
as to the why this
Mhm.
might be a good idea. So leave it, yeah.
Clarification is good, thank you.
Other thoughts or comments before we vote? I don't want to rush a vote. If you guys do want it tabled, I'd encourage you to vote no, and we can revisit this with the rest of the planning commission. Okay, having said that, Commissioner Nancarrow, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Barker?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Let's let that recommendation go to the city council, that no action be taken on fences. That's a yes to no fences. Okay. And the final item, enumerated item at least, is a public hearing again to amend the hillside protection zone with regards to accessory building lot coverage.
Thank you. So it's another one of those cleanup items. We made an attempt in 2021 to bring all of our residential zones into compliance with one another in regards to accessory building standards. We had a lot of discussions about heights, total sizes,
Mhm.
and it was determined by, I believe, the planning commission as well. Well, you may have had a size maximum recommendation, but by the council, that there be no arbitrary number chosen as the maximum amount of accessory building that you can have, that it be limited to your setbacks, your distances, the height of the building, and then your total lot coverage. Using the code, we realized that in the HP 1, 2, and 3 zones, 1112-6, and then each of those sections individually, we had inadvertently forgotten to put the maximum rear yard coverage by accessory building. And just given the socioeconomic class of our community and what the desires may be in the HP zones, it makes sense to me that someone could use this to build an egregiously large building without messing with the lot, total lot
Mhm.
coverage. So the way the ordinance works is there's a definition of what your rear yard is. It's a line parallel to the back of your home to each of your sidelines. And then that follows around what your rear yard is. That creates that, imaginary box. And then you, by square footage, you can cover 25% of that area in an accessory building. So some of that, you can get a pretty good sized building in a lot of cases. And then there's that coupled with, at least in the HP 1, 2, and 3 zones, the total lot coverage being 35%. So if you've already maximized your lot coverage total on the yard by having a mega, super large house, you can't get this accessory building, but that's not always the case either. There's some lots up there that are 2, 3, and 4 acres, who, even if you've got a 6,000 square foot house, you could still build a really large accessory building if you wanted to. So this is sort of a hopeful, friendly amendment coming from staff to clean up and catch something. We haven't had any large building applications come in. We're trying to kind of fend that off, or just be, in reality, it's not about saying a big building is good, bad, or indifferent. We're just trying to be consistent
Mhm.
across all of our
So, yeah, that
residential
was, I did
zones.
have a question. So what are those numbers for
The other zones.
RE20?
It's all this, they're all the same.
Which is what? Is it 25%?
25% of
Mhm.
your rear yard is your maximum coverage. Yep.
So we just inadvertently left it off this one.
Yep.
Okay. So it's
And if
just a
you-
cleanup.
And
really.
if you remember, HP 1, 2, and 3 zones had their own unique standards for a while, where the
Mhm.
buildings could be no taller than 15 feet tall.
Mhm.
It was limited to 1,000 or 1,100 square feet, and they had been treated differently over time, I think, because of the view sheds and things up there, that was all pulled back in 2021 as well,
Mhm.
to say, let's make them, consistent. HP 1 in most cases is an extension of the R110 zone. It's just R110 north of about 3,300 north or so, 33 to 3,500 north, where you have greater geologic needs to do geologic hazard studies when you subdivide. But
Mhm.
there's a large part of the HP of the city that's HP 1 that's essentially just a 10,000 square foot lot zone.
It helps me to remember like the stories behind
Mm-hmm.
when we put these on, and I know not everybody was on the planning commission years ago, but do you happen to know, Scott, is this one that came from the R110 zone when they had the big metal barn? Is this where we came up with 25%, or was it on the Jenny Taylor accessory? I'm remembering a few.
No, the 25% number had preceded the previous 1,500 square foot maximum. The repealing the total, like the maximum size of a building number, just came out of a few of those kind of like concurrent running buildings. We had a Roper, like a Roper steel building that was an application. The 25% number had still been there, so you had like duplicate standards. You could go up to 2,500 or up to 1,500 square feet, unless 25% made it like 800 square feet, then that's the max.
In case anybody's listening to this, I'm not trying to pick on or exploit any one building or anything, but it helps me to remember the face,
Yeah.
to remember some of the decisions that were made and the logic behind some of our.
I can
Code.
remember one where people showed up,
Lots,
neighbors
yeah.
showed up and they were very upset that somebody was allowed to build some kind of a big blue shed in their
Barn,
backyard
yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and there was like several,
They played a rock band in it or something.
yeah, it was, and they just were able to sweep around what the ordinance
It was
was.
in the middle of a bunch of
And
houses. I
it was
drove
in the
by.
middle of a bunch of houses and all the neighbors showed up and they were very, it was ugly, yeah. And it was wiggle room within that ordinance that allowed, then they were within ordinance. So there was nothing that could be done about it.
Okay, well, I have my thoughts on it.
Mhm. And it took up most of their backyard, if I recall.
Let's go ahead and open the public hearing, get public comment on this item prior to any more discussion.
Chris Boulder, North Ogden. I think it's on, is that the one on South 1700?
I don't remember.
It's north off 17.
Yeah. So I guess the only thing I was questioning is the, and I was trying to look real fast, but I couldn't, so I was gonna ask the question. To make it part of your house versus an accessory building, what has to happen? Is it
It's just
like
the roof.
share walls or
Shared roof.
They just have
share
to,
roof?
they have to just touch. We have buildings that are attached by breezeway. We have a building that's attached by an underground walkway, and it's
Okay.
attached because it's part
Really?
of the same foundation. Yeah.
I did
So
not
it's
know
a,
that.
it's a physical connection to the building. And if,
But the key thing is that you get around, you don't have to abide by the setback for height rule.
Right.
If it's touching your, okay.
yeah, at that point,
think-
you can go like 35 feet tall at 10 feet away from the property line if you
I
attach
was
it.
talking to somebody at 2600, I think that way,
Mhm.
where I plugged a sign that they had to attach it to their house because it was too tall.
Yep.
Yeah, the breezeway.
That often comes up with accessory dwelling units too.
Yeah.
There's something specific in that
Yeah, my
ordinance.
neighbor's
as well.
trying to
Yeah.
build a garage.
A shed, yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's gonna be huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Across.
If
Anyway,
you
okay.
think
Garage mahal.
Yeah, garage door.
Well, actually, my brother-in-law did that, just over by the park, but it's
It's
nice.
nice to have one. Yeah.
Mhm. Attach it to your house.
Yeah, no, I want one of those.
What a great idea.
I have an easement. I don't want to do anything. Okay, anybody got online, Scott?
Nope.
Okay, we have nobody online. Go ahead and
Okay.
have a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion, to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay, thoughts on the matter?
Sounds like it's just clean up and to be consistent.
Makes complete sense.
Mhm.
The most compelling thing that I heard was, hey, the HP1 zone is an extension of the R110 zone. It's
Mhm.
just on the hill, right? And I think that, and et cetera, for the other zones. So I think the consistency is important. You know, once in a while I hear, oh, you guys up on the hill from somebody who lives like a mile from me, but they're
Mhm.
down the hill. And I'm like,
Right.
what is different about our
Yeah.
neighborhood? Like nothing.
Mhm.
But there's a perception out there that, and I'd hate to further that by saying, hey, what's good for the people that are uphill is not good for people downhill. So
Mhm.
I think consistency is important.
Keep it consistent.
So I'll make a motion that we recommend to the city council to make this amendment to the accessory building coverage for the HP zones
As proposed.
as proposed in the staff report.
You second that?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Other comments, commentary, rebuttals? Angry outbursts, anything? Okay, Commissioner Green, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Nancarrow?
Yes.
Commissioner Barker?
Yes.
I'm a yes. That resolution will go forward as well. Okay, we did it. We got through 8 items so far, and we're open for public comment again. Be there any,
Nope, nobody online.
okay? Okay, any remarks from the planning commissioners?
Is anybody going to the conference?
Yeah, D2.
Okay,
Nieces, day two.
Not the one on the
Yeah,
29th.
I emailed.
I'm interested. I just was curious
Is that the
what
one
the
you're
plan
on?
was.
Yeah, I'll be there and our city engineer we will both be there both days.
The dates on it
You're
again? I'm pretty sure I was out of town.
It's like the
I will
28th and
be-
29th. does that
I will
sound
be presenting.
Yeah.
Fishing, of
So,
which I do not make any apologies.
so the conference is the 28th and 29th at the Ogden Eccles Conference Center in Washington, on Washington Boulevard. The agenda is out there right now. There are mobile tours. There's a number of different, things to go and engage in.
The
Yeah, would really.
mobile tours like genuinely seem super interesting. I've never seen that on a.
They
conference
usually
before.
always are, like
Yeah.
the one they did in Moab, those were great.
That's awesome.
The one in New Orleans was.
The one in New York City was really good too.
Are you wanting to go then?
Yeah, I
that's
think
cool.
so.
That sounds really
Do I
exciting.
need to look at
This
something and
conference is-
sign
is
up
that
for
something- they
certain
got
mobile
national ones as
tours
well.
before they run
Yeah,
out or
you'll-
anything?
You'll want to do that, but I'll get you
Because
registered generous.
Okay,
City that's
And then just
So
let me
different
know
than
when,
ours.
Yeah.
But-
because I know
and
it
then
seems
they'll
like they
talk
fill
about,
up
hey,
or
this
something.
needs
I don't know if
some
they will in
gentrification.
Ogden, Utah.
And,
Really cool.
And yeah, you can kind of
Sounds
take and
cool.
apply that to North Ogden. You wouldn't think New Orleans and North Ogden would even
Yeah.
apply, but you'll find things.
Yeah, there was, it was,
Yeah.
it was really great.
Oh, I love New
Is-
Orleans. so.
Is anyone else here able to go, Brandon?
I'm not able.
Mm.
Okay.
Mine's day two.
I've been to the one in Salt Lake before. I've never been to one in Ogden and it was nice.
They do a
said-
fall and a spring. So the
Yeah.
spring is always southern Utah somewhere. So the last one that this city went to together was Moab, right? In 2020,
2020.
February 2020, just before COVID shut everything down. That was the
Mhm.
last conference I attended.
Yeah, me too.
And then they didn't do an in-person one again until like late 2021, and it was the fall conference, and that's always somewhere northern Utah. So it roves around up here, but it hasn't been in Ogden for a number of years.
Did you send out an email on the other part?
I just sent it out with the planning commissioner's message and on the agenda.
With the agenda email.
It should still be there.
And it's got a link to
Uh-huh.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I'll have to look that up.
Regarding our public comment from earlier in the meeting, I want to know if there's an appetite to entertain pickleball ordinances above and beyond what we currently have in our sports court. Where I sympathize with that, man, I don't know what could be really enforceable.
Yeah, and I was wondering if you guys have more, is pickleball more, is it louder than
Yes.
tennis or other sports?
Yeah, it's a plastic ball.
Oh,
and
so. it's
so-
up more.
I knew someone who lived just down from the Pleasant View ones.
Okay.
And she's deceased now, but she was like, wow, all of a sudden I started hearing this stuff at night. And, you know, there's kids yelling and stuff.
Right.
You know, but that's in a public pickleball court, you're gonna get that more. In your backyard,
I mean, how
my
many are
brother put
playing?
one in and we go back there and play and sometimes I'm like, how would you like to, you know, cause he
Yeah.
floods the place with light
Mhm.
and stuff. And I mean, I do empathize
Yeah,
with,
Yeah.
especially with light and things like that. I don't think they're used, if you have a pickleball court in your backyard, I kind of don't think it's used enough to be.
mhm.
When it's new, you're out there every
Mhm.
night, but eventually just don't see you being out there every night at some point. My neighbors have a swimming pool
Mhm.
and they're kind of kitty corner from us and I love them to death, but they're loud. They have voices bounce off the water. They're out there every day, or their grandkids, or friends, or they have people over there all the time. And I have to hear it, but I don't let it bother me. But I can see where it would.
It seems like when we did the sports court discussion, that we did have a discussion about noise in general, and I'm pretty sure we put like a curfew in there, like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, that the lights had to go out and the noise had to stop.
Yeah.
9:30, so shut down.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what the time was, but I remember there was quite a
Being in the
discussion.
middle
at
of
the
Now in
time.
October, that still gives you 3 hours of dark.
This is true.
But that's.
But in January, nobody's gonna be making noise out there.
Right.
you know.
But we do take pictures of, well, of course, it gets dark early, you see if I have to have the lights stay on properly.
Mm.
Lights are restricted from 7 AM to 10 PM.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
With no lights, there's probably no noise.
Well, I would just encourage it. We don't have anything actionable for that.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I appreciate that, he sees one being built and he's like,
Right.
what's gonna be happening here? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think that it's gonna be hard to legislate everything your neighbor does.
Mhm.
Swimming pools are loud.
Right.
He can have a garage band, right? And that's all
Right.
like noise ordinances. and things
Power
like that.
tools,
Yeah.
shops.
Exactly.
A lot of that is very seasonal,
Yeah.
Streaming.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like, what neighborhood doesn't have that, right?
The neighbor with Tourette's that just yells obscenities for no reason. All right, we're off the. We're a little off.
Getting
topic.
off track.
All right.
Now we're doing good.
Okay, so,
So I don't think we need anything further
okay,
unless, if you guys want to.
okay. Duly noted from the gentleman, but
Mhm.
I agree that we're not gonna take any action unless it's brought up again. And then I think if enough people bring up
Mhm.
for it, I think entertain.
Right, right.
Sure,
The
we'll
public's
take another
input
look at
and
it.
those kind of
And
things.
residential sport courts, it just, yeah, it sounds challenging, for sure.
Sure. Okay, there's other comments from planning commissioners? Okay, Scott, what about you?
No, that was the main comment. We do still have the planner position out. I'm hoping to maybe drum up some interest for the planner one position at the conference at the end of September. if we don't get a lot of interest there, we may pull that and look at doing first of the year or even just run the rest of the fiscal year and try to hire beginning of July of 2024. It's been difficult to get anybody to apply.
Just
Yeah.
pay, give Brandon Bell back. Just dangle some money in front of him. It's nothing.
It's a possibility. I'll call him. I'll tell him that you said that. He'll appreciate the
I'm
I mean,
on
there may be
Facebook. I
more
haven't opened
people
up
like
Facebook in a long time, but
graduating
check
and
it out.
things like that at that time, you know.
Yeah, we've extended a couple of offers. In both cases, they've either accepted a job before the offer was extended in like 24 hours, or the other place had kind of like do a dive and save and keep them. So you're trying to find somebody who's close enough geographically that it's not like Salt Lake City where you've got a 45-mile commute and expect somebody to do that every
Yeah.
day.
Right.
Good luck, hiring's hard.
It
Right
is.
now, it's terrible.
It's hard.
Yeah.
And do you have contacts with like universities that graduate people like you?
We've got
Yeah.
interns in here.
Yeah, so we have it posted on the APA Utah website, which is the #1 resource, and then it's cross-listed at all of the universities.
So
And I've got a graduate teacher who that's how we got our intern, Stephen Thomas, who was here for a while with us, was through that. So she's put that out, but unless you live up north here,
Right.
most of those University of Utah students, which their BYU have actual planning programs. And then Utah State University has a geography program with an emphasis in planning, and that's kind of what Weber State's is as well. But they tend to bring more landscape architects or the mapping, like GIS software people, than they do just like a traditional city or municipal planner.
There are people down at Smiths every day that say they will work.
For sure.
So I'm just putting that out there,
You know,
except for the guy on Sunday, his sign just said, need beer.
is there any
I'm gonna run him
possibility,
over.
or perhaps you already have it that way, like, could the qualifications be extended a little to other types of graduates of programs? Maybe not as direct, I don't know.
I think they could. I mean, at this point, anybody who applies that I think would
You'd
be
be willing
I'd
to.
be
Could be
willing to,
trainable.
I'd be willing to look at and they'd be
Right.
trainable.
Right, because I mean, that's what I'm thinking, because I just know it's been a long time and very, very difficult to come by,
But-
so.
But planning is one of those very pragmatic, practical school paths. Like you come out of it pretty ready to do the municipal
Right.
planning work. And so,
Right.
and we've gotten over the big rush of building permits and some of the short range planning stuff. So we're able to have time to bring like these zoning text amendments forward. So more, I think it's probably just managing workload and seeing what's coming that's urgent and we need to take care of immediately versus the longer range stuff that we're doing.
Mhm.
Good luck.
We might be hired for a vacation, right?
Yeah.
So you don't got nothing to do, just go get paid for vacation.
I just go on vacation and let the phone call stack up and know that the work is there when we get back. That's what I
Remember,
did
you're on
over the
public
summer.
record.
Yeah.
No
I mean,
meeting this week.
Everyone's been gotten back, everyone has been called back. So it takes a little time.
Yeah.
Okay, our city manager and attorney is not here tonight,
He has
so,
been excused, yes.
okay. Motion to adjourn, unless there's anything else.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, see you guys 2 weeks.
So should I just go to this website and look at the,
You don't have to
something I need to sign up for?
And-
I'm sorry.